The woman's bloody
Oh
handprint
my
appeared on James
God.
Corrigan's wagon wheel before he even saw her face. 1 second, the road was empty. The next second, she was there, falling, bleeding, grabbing his wagon like it was the last solid thing in the world. James pulled the horses so hard they screamed. The wagon jerked sideways. Fence posts rolled in the back, and the woman collapsed in the dirt road, her chest heaving like she'd been running for miles. Maybe she had been, please. Her voice was barely a whisper, but James heard it over everything. Over his horses snorting, over his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, over the wind that carried the smell of gunpowder and blood across the Arizona desert. James was 32 years old. He had survived a war. He knew what death looked like when it was chasing someone, and death was chasing this woman. He could see it in her eyes, eyes that were too wide, too afraid, too certain that the next breath might be her last. She was Apache. James saw that immediately. The buckskin dress, the long black hair, the brown skin that marked her as different in a territory where different meant dangerous, where being Apache meant you had almost no rights, almost no protection, almost no chance when white men decided you were fair game. Blood ran down her right arm, not a little blood, a lot of blood, the kind that meant a bullet had torn through flesh and kept going. Her dress was ripped at the shoulder. Dirt covered her face and hands, and her eyes never stopped moving, watching the road behind her, waiting for whoever was coming. They killed my husband. She said it flat. No crying, no begging, just stating a fact like she was reporting the weather. They killed him for his horse. Now they want me. James felt his stomach drop. He'd heard stories. Every white man in Arizona Territory had heard stories about what happened to Apache women when certain types of men caught them. Men who thought the law didn't apply to Indians. Men who saw the reservations as hunting grounds. Men who believed they could do anything they wanted because no one would stop them. The woman tried to stand. Her legs gave out. She fell again, catching herself on her hands. Both palms pressed into the dust. She left more bloody handprints. 5 fingers. Clear as day. Evidence of a crime no one would ever investigate. Behind her, maybe half a mile back, James heard voices. Shouting, laughing, the sound of horses moving fast. Men were coming. Multiple men. And they weren't coming to help. The Arizona sun burned down on everything. It was late afternoon in August, the hottest part of the year, the kind of heat that made smart people stay inside. But James had been hauling fence posts to his ranch, and this woman had been running for her life. And now they were both on this empty road with death riding toward them. Get in the wagon. James didn't recognize his own voice. It came out hard, certain, like he'd been preparing for this moment his entire life. The woman's head snapped up. She stared at him, really looked at him for the first time, measuring him, judging him, trying to figure out if he was different than the men chasing her or just another kind of danger. No, James said. He stood up on the wagon seat. His rifle was under the bench. He grabbed it, made sure she saw it. I won't say it again. The woman's eyes went to the rifle, then to his face, then to the empty road stretching ahead. She was doing math in her head, survival math, the kind where every choice might be the wrong choice, but you have to pick one anyway. She pulled herself up using the wagon wheel, left more blood on the wood. Her right leg dragged as she climbed into the back of the wagon. She moved past the fence posts and tools and pressed herself into the corner, making herself small, making herself invisible, the way prey animals do when they know the predator is close. James snapped the reins before he could think, before he could change his mind, before his brain could catch up with what his hands were doing. The horses lurched forward. The wagon rolled. And just like that, James Corrigan became part of something he didn't understand. The voices behind them got louder, closer. James heard a bottle break, heard men cursing, heard someone fire a gun into the air, just for the sound of it. These men were drunk and hunting. The worst combination. There's a pistol behind the toolbox, James said. He didn't turn around, kept his eyes on the road. If you know how to use it, use it. He heard her move, heard the metallic sound of a gun being checked, so she knew weapons. That was good. That might keep them alive for the next 10 minutes. Maybe longer if luck showed up. The riders burst out of the brush 200 yards back. James counted 4, maybe 5. Hard to see through the dust. They weren't wearing badges. Just rough clothes on rough horses. The kind of men who drifted through Arizona Territory looking for easy money and easier victims. One of them raised a bottle over his head. Sunlight flashed on glass. Corrigan. The shout carried across the empty land. That's Apache property in your wagon. Hand her over. James's blood went ice cold. They knew his name. Someone had told them. Someone had pointed him out. This wasn't random. These men had planned something. Maybe not everything, but enough. They will kill you for this, the woman said from behind him. Her voice was quiet, calm, like she was discussing the price of flour. Probably, James agreed. Then why? James thought about that question. Thought about the war he'd fought. The things he'd seen. The way good men turned evil when no one was watching. The way evil became normal when enough people looked away. Because I've seen what happens when good people do nothing, James said. And I'm tired of it. The woman went quiet. But James heard her shift in the wagon, getting ready, understanding that talking was over. Action was coming. The riders were gaining ground. Their horses were faster, fresher, and they were angry now. Angry that their prey had found protection. Angry that a white rancher would interfere. Up ahead, canyon walls rose from the desert floor. Dark red rock. Narrow passages. James knew that canyon. He'd ridden through it 100 times. If he could reach it, the riders would have to come single file. Couldn't surround him. Couldn't use their numbers. The first bullet hit the wagon 2 feet from James's head. Wood exploded. Splinters cut his cheek. He barely felt it. The woman fired back. Her shot was clean, controlled, better than James could have done with his heart trying to punch through his ribs. The canyon was close now, maybe 300 yards. James pushed the horses harder, faster. The wagon bounced over rocks. Fence posts slid in the back. The woman held on, but kept the pistol ready. Canyon? James shouted. Not sure if he was explaining or promising. Just needed to say something. Needed to hear a voice that wasn't screaming or shooting another bullet. This one lied, hitting rock and ricocheting with a sound like a bell cracking. These men weren't good shots. They were drunk, angry, used to hunting people who couldn't fight back. The wagon rolled into shadow. The canyon walls rose up on both sides. Temperature dropped 10 degrees in 1 second. James saw his chance. A rock outcrop on the left, big enough to hide behind. He yanked the reins. The wagon tipped, almost rolled, then settled behind the rock. James jumped down. Rifle ready. Stay in the wagon, he told the woman. Shoot anything that comes around that corner that isn't me. She nodded once. No questions, no arguments. Her face had gone pale under the dirt and blood, but her hand stayed steady on the pistol. She'd done this before, James realized. Maybe not exactly this, but something close enough. The riders' voices echoed off canyon walls, getting closer. James pressed against rock and waited. His heart counted seconds. His finger rested on the trigger. He'd killed men before, during the war, up close where he could see their faces. Swore he'd never do it again. But these men had murdered a woman's husband, hunted her for sport, were coming to finish what they started. And James Corrigan was the only thing standing between them and her. The first rider came around the corner fast, too confident. James fired from 10 feet away. The horse screamed, reared, threw the rider hard into canyon wall. The sound was wet, final. The man didn't move. The other riders stopped. James heard them arguing, heard the wispy courage cracking, heard fear creeping into their voices. And James Corrigan realized something. He'd just chosen a side, and there was no going back.
The silence after the gunshot felt like the whole world holding its breath. James pressed his back against the canyon rock. His hands shook. The rifle was hot. Smoke drifted from the barrel. 20 feet away, the dead man lay in a twisted heap. His horse had run off, disappearing into the desert with empty stirrups bouncing. Behind the wagon, Nina fired once. The bullet hit nothing, but it made the other riders pull back fast. Their horses stamped and snorted. Men cursed. Someone dropped a bottle, and it shattered on rock. Corrigan. The voice came from around the canyon bend. Rough. Angry. Scared underneath. You just killed a white man for an Apache squaw? You know what that means. James said nothing. His throat was too dry. His mind was racing too fast. What had he done? He'd killed a man. Shot him off his horse like a target. And for what? For a woman he didn't know? For a stranger who'd fallen in front of his wagon? But he'd seen her eyes. Seen the terror and the certainty of death. And he'd made a choice. Now he had to live with it. Or die with it. We got 3 men left. The voice continued. You got 1 rifle and 1 wagon. You ain't getting out of this canyon alive. So here's what we're gonna do. You hand over the squaw. We'll call it even. We'll forget you killed Danny. We'll ride away, and that's the end of it. James felt Nina's eyes on his back. She hadn't said a word since he'd jumped from the wagon. Just kept the pistol ready. Kept breathing. Kept waiting to see what kind of man James Corrigan really was. No deal, James called back. His voice sounded stronger than he felt. Laughter. Mean laughter. The kind that has no humor in it. Then you're a dead man, Corrigan. We'll wait you out. Sun's going down soon. Dark comes. We'll pick you off when you try to leave. Or maybe we'll just burn you out. Plenty of dry brush around here. James's mind worked fast. The man was right. 3 against 2. Night coming. No help within 20 miles. The fort was too far. The town was too far. No one even knew James and Nina were here. They could die in this canyon, and no one would find them for days. Unless. She's my wife, James shouted. The words came out before he could stop them. Before he could think. Before his brain caught up with his mouth. Silence. Complete silence. Even the wind seemed to stop. What? The voice sounded confused now. Less certain. The woman. She's my wife. Apache custom. I gave horses to her husband's family. The marriage is legal. Territorial law recognizes tribal marriages. So what you're chasing isn't a fugitive. She's a white man's wife. My wife. You touch her, you're attacking my legal property. James heard Nina suck in a breath behind him. But she didn't speak. Didn't contradict him. She was smart enough to understand what he was doing. Building a legal wall. Creating protection where none existed. Lying to save both their lives. That's horseshit, Corrigan. But the voice had doubt in it now. Uncertainty. You expect us to believe you married some Apache squaw? Today? Right after the man stopped himself. Almost admitted to murder. Believe what you want, James said. But I'm taking my wife home to my ranch. You want to stop me? You'll be attacking a married couple. A white rancher and his legal wife. That's a crime the territorial marshal can't ignore. That's federal attention. That's newspapers and judges and questions no one wants to answer. More silence. James could hear the men talking among themselves. Low voices. Arguing. The logic was working on them. Or the fear was. White men could get away with killing Apaches. Everyone knew that. But attacking a white rancher? Killing a white man and his legal wife? That brought consequences. Prove it, the voice finally said. Prove you're married. Show us papers. James felt his stomach drop. He had no papers. No proof. Nothing but a desperate lie told in a desperate moment. But before he could answer, Nina spoke. The marriage was yesterday, she called out. Her English was perfect. Clear. At the White River Apache camp. His family gave horses to my family. The ceremony was witnessed. The Indian agent will record it tomorrow. This is how Apache marriage works. This is how territorial law recognizes it. She was building on his lie, making it bigger, more detailed, more believable. James felt a surge of gratitude so strong it almost knocked him over. And you are, the voice asked. Suspicious, but listening. Nina Hashka, daughter of the Sibique Apache. My first husband was William Hashka. He was murdered this morning by white men who wanted his horse. Then those men hunted me. Mr. Corrigan gave me protection. We went to White River. We married according to custom and law. Now I am Nina Corrigan. And these men trying to kill me are breaking territorial law. The way she said it. Calm. Factual. Like she was explaining something obvious to stupid children. James almost believed it himself. William Hashka was shot for trespassing, the voice argued. But it was weaker now. He was off reservation land. We had the right. To murder him? Nina interrupted. To take his horse? To hunt his widow? What law gives you that right? Show me. Tell me which judge said you could kill Apache people for sport. No answer. Because there was no good answer. Everyone in Arizona Territory knew what happened to Apaches. Everyone knew the violence. Everyone knew the injustice. But no one said it out loud. No one admitted it. And now Nina was forcing them to either admit what they'd done or back down. James heard horses moving. Not closer. Not attacking. Moving away. Uncertain. Regrouping. This ain't over, Corrigan, the voice called. But it was farther away now. Retreating. We'll check your story. We'll talk to the Indian agent. We'll find out if you're lying. And if you are, we'll be back. And we'll bring the marshal. I'll be at my ranch, James answered. You know where to find me. The sound of horses faded. Hoofbeats on rock. Then nothing. Just wind and silence and the dead man lying in the canyon. James waited 5 full minutes before he moved. Making certain they were really gone. Then he turned to look at Nina. She was still in the wagon, still holding the pistol. Her face was unreadable. You lied, she said quietly. Yes. They will check. They will learn the truth. I know. Nina climbed down from the wagon slowly. Her wounded arm left blood streaks on the wood. She walked to where James stood and looked at him with those dark, measuring eyes. You saved my life twice today. The silence after the gunshot felt like the whole world holding its breath. Now we must make the lie true. James pressed his back against the canyon rock. James felt the weight of his words settling on him like stones. Smoke drifted from the barrel. There has to be another way. 20 feet away. Tell me what it is. The dead man lay. His voice was hard. Tell me the law that protects Apache women. Disappearing into the desert. Tell me the judge who will believe my word over white behind the wagon. Tell me how I stay alive without your protection. The bullet hit nothing. James had made the other riders pull back because there was no answer. Their horses not in Arizona Territory. In 1891, someone dropped a place where Apache lives were worth less than horses. The voice came from around the canyon skin color. Where a woman like Nina could be hunted for sport, you just killed a white man for an Apache squaw. We go to White River. Nina, you know what that means. We find my husband's family. James said nothing. We make the marriage too dry. His mind was racing too fast. We get the Indian agent to record it. He killed a man. We shot him off before those men come back with questions. For I don't even know you. For a stranger who'd fallen in front of his wagon. I don't know you either. But he'd seen her eyes. But you stopped when I needed help. And the certainty you fought when you could have driven away. And he'd made a choice. You lied when the truth would have killed me. That tells me enough. We got 3 men left. I'm not asking you to love me. You got one rifle. I'm asking you to finish what you started. You ain't getting out of this canyon alive. To give me a chance to live. So here's what we're gonna do. James looked at her. You hand over the squaw. Really looked at her. We'll call it. She was maybe 25 years old. We'll forget you killed Danny. Bleeding from a bullet wound. And that's the end. Covered in dirt and James felt Nina's eyes on his back. Her husband had been murdered that morning. She hadn't said a word since he'd jumped from the wagon. And now she stood in a canyon, asking a stranger to marry her. Waiting to see what kind of man James survive another day. Okay, no deal, James said. James called back. We'll do it. His voice sounded stronger. Nina nodded once. No smile. Mean laughter. No relief. The kind that has no humor in it. Then we go now. Then you're a dead man. Before dark. Corrigan. Before those men change their minds. Sun's going down. Come back. Dark comes. They loaded the dead man's body off when you try to wagon. Or maybe we'll just burn you out. Plenty of dry brush James had done. James's mind worked fast. Let the marshal deal with it. 3 against 2. Questions come. Night coming. At least they'd have some answers 20 miles. The ride to White was too far. 3 hours. The town was too far. James and Nina sat side by side. No one even knew James and Nina were here. Neither spoke much. They could die in this canyon. What was there to say? And no one would find them for days. They were strangers bound by violence and desperation. She's my wife. James about to commit to a marriage. The words came out before he could stop. About to lie to families and agents. Before his brain caught up with his mouth. But they were alive. Silence. And in Arizona Territory in 1891, even the wind seemed to stop. Sometimes survival was the voice sounded confused that mattered. Less certain. The woman. She's my wife. Apache custom. I gave horses to her husband's family. The marriage is legal. Territorial law recognizes tribal marriages. So what you're chasing isn't a fugitive. She's a white man's wife. My wife. You touch her, you're attacking my legal property. James heard Nina suck in a breath behind him. But she didn't speak, didn't contradict him. She was smart enough to understand what he was doing. Building a legal wall. Creating protection where none existed. Lying to save both their lives. That's horseshit, Corrigan. But the voice had doubt in it now. Uncertainty. You expect us to believe you married some Apache squaw? Today? Right after the man stopped himself. Almost admitted to murder. Believe what you want, James said. But I'm taking my wife home to my ranch. You want to stop me? You'll be attacking a married couple. A white rancher and his legal wife. That's a crime the Territorial Marshal can't ignore. That's federal attention. That's newspapers and judges and questions no one wants to answer. More silence. James could hear the men talking among themselves. Low voices. Arguing. The logic was working on them. Or the fear was. White men could get away with killing Apaches. Everyone knew that. But attacking a white rancher? Killing a white man and his legal wife? That brought consequences. Prove it, the voice finally said. Prove you're married. Show us papers. James felt his stomach drop. He had no papers. No proof. Nothing but a desperate lie told in a desperate moment. But before he could answer, Nina spoke. The marriage was yesterday, she called out. Her English was perfect. Clear. At the White River Apache camp. His family gave horses to my family. The ceremony was witnessed. The Indian agent will record it tomorrow. This is how Apache marriage works. This is how territorial law recognizes it. She was building on his lie, making it bigger, more detailed, more believable. James felt a surge of gratitude so strong, it almost knocked him over. And you are? The voice asked. Suspicious, but listening. Nina Hashka, daughter of the Sibique Apache. My first husband was William Hashka. He was murdered this morning by white men who wanted his horse. Then those men hunted me. Mr. Corrigan gave me protection. We went to White River. We married according to custom and law. Now I am Nina Corrigan. And these men trying to kill me are breaking territorial law. The way she said it. Calm. Factual. Like she was explaining something obvious to stupid children. James almost believed it himself. William Hashka was shot for trespassing, the voice argued. But it was weaker now. He was off reservation land. We had the right. To murder him? Nina interrupted. To take his horse? To hunt his widow? What law gives you that right? Show me. Tell me which judge said you could kill Apache people for sport. No answer. Because there was no good answer. Everyone in Arizona Territory knew what happened to Apaches. Everyone knew the violence. Everyone knew the injustice. But no one said it out loud. No one admitted it. And now Nina was forcing them to either admit what they'd done or back down. James heard horses moving. Not closer. Not attacking. Moving away. Uncertain. Regrouping. This ain't over, Corrigan, the voice called. But it was farther away now. Retreating. We'll check your story. We'll talk to the Indian agent. We'll find out if you're lying. And if you are, we'll be back. And we'll bring the marshal. I'll be at my ranch, James answered. You know where to find me. The sound of horses faded. Hoofbeats on rock. Then nothing. Just wind and silence and the dead man lying in the canyon. James waited 5 full minutes before he moved. Making certain they were really gone. Then he turned to look at Nina. She was still in the wagon. Still holding the pistol. Her face was unreadable. You lied, she said quietly. Yes. They will check. They will learn the truth. I know. Nina climbed down from the wagon slowly. Her wounded arm left blood streaks on the wood. She walked to where James stood and looked at him with those dark, measuring eyes. You saved my life twice today. The sun was setting when they reached White River. The sky turned red and orange like the whole world was on fire. James felt every muscle in his body aching. His face still had dried blood on it from the splinters. His hands had stopped shaking, but only because he was too tired to shake anymore. Nina sat beside him, silent. Her wounded arm was wrapped in cloth James had torn from his own shirt. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but the bandage was already soaking through. She needed real medical care. She needed rest. She needed about 100 things James couldn't give her. What he could give her was this. A marriage. Legal protection. A chance to stay alive. My husband's family lives past the main agency, Nina said. Her voice was flat. Empty. His mother's name is Bishad. She speaks English. Let me talk first. If she refuses us, we leave fast. James nodded. He'd been to White River twice before, delivering supplies for the Indian agent. The place wasn't really a town, just wooden buildings scattered around the agency headquarters. Apache camps spread through the valley, families trying to survive on land the government had given them. Land that used to be theirs anyway before white people decided it wasn't. They passed several camps. People stopped working to watch the wagon roll by. A white man with an Apache woman. Blood on both of them. A dead body wrapped in canvas in the wagon bed. It wasn't a normal sight. People stared. James felt their eyes like weight pressing down. "Turn here," Nina said quietly. James guided the horses onto a smaller trail. Pine trees grew thicker here. The air smelled like wood smoke and cooking food. His stomach growled. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten. Morning maybe, before everything went wrong. The camp appeared in a clearing. 4 brush shelters arranged in a circle. A fire pit in the middle. Women working with baskets. An old man fixing a saddle in the shade. Normal life. The kind of peaceful afternoon that existed before violence showed up and destroyed everything. The old man saw them first. He stood up fast. His face went hard as stone. He said something in Apache. Sharp. Angry. The women looked up. One of them dropped her basket. Nina stood up in the wagon. Slow. Careful. She spoke in Apache. Her voice carried across the clearing. James didn't understand the words, but he heard the emotion underneath. Grief. Rage. Desperation. The sound of someone delivering the worst news possible. One of the women started crying. Another covered her mouth with both hands. The old man's face didn't change, but his hands clenched into fists. A woman emerged from one of the shelters. Older. Maybe 50. Gray in her black hair. She walked straight to the wagon and looked up at Nina. Said something quiet. Nina answered. Then the older woman reached up and helped Nina down from the wagon. They embraced. Carefully. Avoiding Nina's wounded arm. The older woman spoke softly. Nina nodded. Then cried. Actually cried. The first tears James had seen from her all day. The older woman held her. Let her break. Let her be human instead of just surviving. James sat on the wagon feeling like an intruder. Like he'd walked into the middle of someone's private grief and had no right to be there. Which was exactly what he'd done. The older woman looked at him over Nina's shoulder. Her eyes were dark and sharp. Measuring him. Judging him. Seeing everything about him in one long look. You are James Corrigan, she said in English. Not a question. A statement. Yes, ma'am, James answered. You saved Nina from the men who killed my son. Yes, ma'am. The woman studied him for another long moment. Then she gently released Nina and walked closer to the wagon. I am Bashad, William's mother. Nina tells me you claimed her as your wife. That you said Apache custom was followed. That horses were given. This is a lie. James felt his face burn. Yes, ma'am. It's a lie. I said it to stop the men. To give Nina protection under territorial law. But it was a lie. And now you come here to make the lie true. Bashad's face showed nothing. No anger. No approval. Just cold assessment. Why? You could leave Nina here. Tell the men you changed your mind. Walk away. Why risk everything for an Apache woman you don't know? The question hung in the air like smoke. James felt everyone in the camp watching him. Waiting. His answer mattered. Not just to Bashad. To all of them. Because I was too late, James said quietly. I heard the gunshots this morning. I knew what they meant. I kept driving. I told myself it wasn't my problem. Then Nina fell in front of my wagon, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Couldn't be the man who does nothing while people die. So I stopped. And I fought. And I lied. And now I'm here to fix what I broke. To give Nina real protection. To finish what I started. Bashad's eyes never left his face. You offer marriage to a woman whose husband was murdered today. This is not love. This is business. Yes, ma'am, James agreed. It's business. It's survival. It's two people trying to stay alive in a place that wants us both dead for different reasons. I'm not offering romance. I'm offering partnership. Nina gets legal protection. I keep my honor. We help each other according to law and custom. And if this partnership lasts forever? Bashad asked. 5 years. 10 years. The rest of your life. What then? James met her eyes. Then we're married forever. I don't break promises. Even ones I make by accident. Silence. Long silence. Bashad turned and spoke to Nina in Apache. Fast words. Back and forth. Questions and answers. The conversation went on for several minutes. James sat still and waited. His whole future balanced on what these two women decided. Finally, Bashad looked at him again. Nina says you were honest. That you fought hard. That you offered protection before thinking about the cost. These are good things. She paused. But you are white. Your people will hate you for marrying Apache. Our people may not trust you. You will belong to neither world. Can you accept this? I've felt like that since the war ended, James said. At least this time I'll be on the right side. Bashad almost smiled. Almost. She turned and called out in Apache. The old man stood up and walked to a corral behind the shelters. He came back leading 2 horses. Small, tough Apache ponies. Not James's horses. Different horses. The sun was setting when they reached White River. Said. The sky turned red and orange, so I give you horses to give back to me. You James felt them from every muscle in his body ache. You offer them back. His face still had dried blood on it from the splinters. Witnesses see. His hands had stopped shaking, but only because he was too tired to shake anymore. Territorial law recognizes it. Silent. She paused. Her wounded arm was wrapped in cloth James had torn from his own shirt. Do you understand? The bleeding had mostly stopped, but the bandage was already soaking. This Apache mother was giving him the tools. She needed real medical care. Accepting a stranger into her family needed about 100 things James couldn't give her. Nina alive. What he could give her was she was sacrificing her son's widow, legal protection, a chance to stay alive. The alternative was my husband's family lives past the main agency. Said. Nina said. Thank you. Her voice was flat. Bishad said sharply. His mother's name is Bishad. Nina she speaks English. Smart. Let me talk first. She survived what would break most women. We leave if you waste her life, James treat her badly. He'd been to White River twice before. I will find you. Delivering supplies for the Indian. It was the kind of threat a mother makes. The place wasn't really a town. Fierce. Just wooden buildings scattered around the agency headquarters. Yes, ma'am. Apache turned to the camp through the valley. Spoke loud in Apache. Families trying to survive on land the government fire was built higher. Land that used to be theirs anyway before white people decided it wasn't. The old man positioned the horses in the center. They passed several camps. Everything happened fast. People stopped working to watch the wagon roll by. Like they'd done this before. A white man with an Apache knew exactly how to turn a lie into truth. A dead body wrapped down from the wagon. In the wagon bed. His legs were stiff. It wasn't a normal sight. His body hurt. People stared. But he walked to where Bishad James felt their eyes like weight stood across from Nina. Turn here. Nina said quietly. The sun had set guided the horses onto a firelight painted everything orange and thicker here. The air smelled like wood smoke, half an Apache food. Half his stomach growled. Her voice carried authority that made even the children stop before everything went wrong. James didn't understand all the words. 4 brush shelters arranged in a circle. This was a binding, a fire pit, a contract. Women promise made in front of witnesses. An old man place your hands on the horse's shade. Normal life. Accept them as gift afternoon that existed before violence showed up. The horse's neck were warm under his palms. The old man saw them first. Their breath came in soft. He stood up fast. His face went hard as stone. Proof that something in Apache was actually happening. Sharp. Now offer them back. The women looked up. Say the words. One of them dropped James's her basket. Throat was dry. Nina stood up in the wagon. Nina Hashka's wife. Careful. I offer horses for her family's blessing. Her voice carried across protection and provision. James didn't understand the Apache custom, but he heard the emotion underneath. Nina stepped forward. Rage. Placed her hand over James's where it rested someone delivering the worst news possible. Her skin was rough with calluses. One of the women started crying. Another covered her mouth with both hands. In that moment, James, the old man's face complicated in her face, but his hands clenched into fists. Not even friendship. A woman emerged from one of the shelters. The look of someone accepting a bad situation, gray in her black deciding to survive. She walked straight to the wagon, accepted the horse up at Nina. Said something Apache. Nina answered. Words. Then the older woman reached up and helped Nina down from the wagon. They embraced, making it carefully. When Bishad Nina's wounded arm, she pulled out the older woman spoke softly and a pencil. Nina nodded. She wrote carefully. Cried. Names. Actually cried. Date. The first witnesses. Tears James had seen. The marriage recorded in both English the older woman held her. When she was done, let her tore out the page and gave it to just surviving. This goes James to the Indian agent tomorrow, like an intruder. He records it into the middle of someone's private territorial law and had no right to be there. No one can challenge without proof of fraud. The older woman looked at the paper over Nina's shoulder. His hands were steady now. Her eyes were dark. The lie had become truth. Measuring written down, judging him, witnessed, seeing everything about him. He was married to Nina Hashka. You are James Corrigan now. She said, a woman he'd met 6 hours ago. Not a question. A woman whose husband had been murdered that morning. James answered. A woman he saved Nina from the man trapped in marriage to keep her alive. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The woman studied him for another long moment. She looked at him with eyes that had released Nina and walked closer to the wagon. I am This is only the beginning. William's mother. Tomorrow the real Nina tells me you claimed her as your wife. Making this marriage look real. That you said Apache custom was believe it. That horses both of you alive. This is a lie. For the lie, James felt his face burn in more than just words. It's a lie. James understood. I said it to stop the paper was protection to give Nina protection under territorial law. If people believed, but it was a lie. He and Nina would come here to make the lie true. Act it. Bishad's face so convincing that no one could prove otherwise. No approval. He looked at cold assessment. She looked back. Why? 2 strangers bound by law. Tell the men you changed your mind. Partners in survival. Why risk? And somewhere in the firelight, woman you don't know of her dead husband's The question hung in the air like smoke. James felt everyone in the camp watching. The beginning of something neither wanted. His answer mattered. But both needed. Not just to Bishad. They would make this work. To all of them. Or they would die because I was too late. James said quietly. I heard the gunshots this morning. I knew what they meant. I kept driving. I told myself it wasn't my problem. Then Nina fell in front of my wagon, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Couldn't be the man who does nothing while people die. So I stopped. And I fought. And I lied. And now I'm here to fix what I broke. To give Nina real protection. To finish what I started. Bashad's eyes never left his face. You offer marriage to a woman whose husband was murdered today. This is not love. This is business. Yes, ma'am, James agreed. It's business. It's survival. It's two people trying to stay alive in a place that wants us both dead for different reasons. I'm not offering romance. I'm offering partnership. Nina gets legal protection. I keep my honor. We help each other according to law and custom. And if this partnership lasts forever? Bashad asked. 5 years. 10 years. The rest of your life. What then? James met her eyes. Then we're married forever. I don't break promises. Even ones I make by accident. Silence. Long silence. Bashad turned and spoke to Nina in Apache. Fast words. Back and forth. Questions and answers. The conversation went on for several minutes. James sat still and waited. His whole future balanced on what these two women decided. Finally, Bashad looked at him again. Nina says you were honest. That you fought hard. That you offered protection before thinking about the cost. These are good things. She paused. But you are white. Your people will hate you for marrying Apache. Our people may not trust you. You will belong to neither world. Can you accept this? I've felt like that since the war ended, James said. At least this time I'll be on the right side. Bashad almost smiled. Almost. She turned and called out in Apache. The old man stood up and walked to a corral behind the shelters. He came back leading 2 horses. Small, tough Apache ponies. Not James's horses. Different horses. The silence after the gunshot felt like the whole world holding its breath. James woke to the sound of camp activity outside. James pressed his back against the canyon rock. The Apache families were already working. The rifle was hot, making food. Smoke drifted from the barrel. Starting another day like the world dead man lay in a twisted heap. But for James, his horse had run off. He'd married a woman he barely knew. Empty stirrups lied to protect her. Behind the wagon, he had to make everyone believe it was real. The bullet was already awake, but it made the other riders stood outside talking with Bashad. Their horse's wounded arm was freshly bandaged. Then cursed. Someone had given her a dropped a bottle, and it shattered blue with small beads at the collar. The voice came from around the canyon bend. Stronger, rough, more angry, scared underneath. Had given her back some of the white man for yesterday's violence had stolen. You know what that means? She saw James. James said nothing. We go to the Indian agent now. His mind was racing. Before the men from yesterday started asking questions. He'd killed a man. Before anyone has shot him off his horse like a target. Good morning to you too. For a woman he didn't know. He tried to smile, stranger who had fallen in front of his wagon. There's no time for pleasantries. Seen the terror and the certainty. Every hour we wait is an hour those men can use. Now he had to live with it. We need the marriage recorded officially. We got 3 men left. We need the government. The voice continued. We need proof they cannot easily challenge. She was getting out of this canyon. James knew she was right. So here's something about the way she said it. You hand over the realize how different their worlds were. We'll forget you killed like someone who'd spent her whole life fighting for survival. James felt Nina's eyes on his back. Strategic. She hadn't said a word. There was no room for comfort or courtesy. Just kept the pistol ready. Always one mistake away. Kept waiting to see what kind of man James Corrigan really was. That Bashad provided. No deal. Then they climbed onto James's wagon. His voice sounded stronger than headquarters. Laughter. The morning air was cool. Laughter. Pleasant. The kind that has the kind of morning that should have felt then peaceful. You're a dead man. But James's stomach was tight with nerves. Sun's going down. The Indian agent's office was a small wooden building. We'll pick you off when you try to leave. Compound. Or maybe we'll just sign outside read Bureau of Dry Brush around here. White River James's mind worked fast. James had been here twice before. 3 against 2. The agent had been a thin man within 20 miles, who looked at it was too far. People like they were problems to be solved. No one even knew James and Nina were here. Peterson was at his desk. They could die in this canyon, and no one would find them for days. Saw James, then saw Nina. She's my wife. Then his eyes narrowed. James shouted. Corrigan. The words came out before he could stop them. James pulled out the marriage paper. Before his brain caught up with his mouth. Need to report a marriage. Complete silence. Apache custom. Even the wind happened yesterday at the Hashka family camp. The voice sounded confused. Peterson now picked up the paper. Less certain. Read it slowly. The woman. His eyebrows rose. Apache you married an Apache woman? I gave horses to her husband's family. Nina Hashka. The marriage is now Nina Corrigan. Territorial law recognizes tribal marriages. Then back at James. So what you're chasing isn't a fugitive, but legal. She's a white man said firmly. My wife. Apache custom allows for quick marriages in cases of widowhood. James heard Territorial law recognizes tribal customs but she didn't speak. For marriage purposes. Didn't contradict him. You are required smart enough to understand Peterson's face showed surprise. Building a legal wall. He clearly hadn't expected an Apache woman to know the law. Lying to save both their lives. English this well. That's horse to challenge him directly. But the voice had doubt in her now. Mrs. Uncertainty. He said her new name to believe you married some Apache squaw. But I need to verify the details. Right after when exactly did the man stop himself? Yesterday afternoon, murder. James said. Believe what you want. Nina's first husband, William Hashka, was killed home to my ranch. Murdered by white men, you'll be attacking a married couple. I gave a white rancher and his legal family accepted horses. That's a crime the Territorial Marshal can't ignore. Multiple witnesses. That's federal attention. Is legitimate. That's newspapers and judges and questions no one wants to answer. Each word seemed to take forever. James could hear the men talking among themselves. They both knew what this was. Arguing. A test. The logic Peterson was taking his time. Where the fear was. Making them uncomfortable. White men could get away reminding them who had power here. Everyone William Hashka, but attacking a white rancher slowly. Killing a white man, no record of his legal wife. No report that brought consequences. Because it just happened, the voice finally said. Yesterday, prove you're married. The men who killed him are still out there. James felt his stomach drop. That's a matter for the Territorial Marshal. No proof. Peterson nothing but a desperate lie told in a desperate moment. Convenient. But before Nina could answer sharply, Nina Apache deaths the marriage was in yesterday's jurisdiction. She called out. Peterson's jaw was perfect. He didn't like being challenged at the White River Apache especially camp. Not by an Apache His family gave horses but to he also family. Couldn't deny the ceremony was witnessed. The marriage paper was the Indian agent will record it tomorrow. Were real. This is how everything Apache was done according to proper custom. This is how Territorial law recognizes it. Hard. She was building on his lie. Then he made a copy and handed it to James. More believable. Congratulations on your marriage. James felt a surge of gratitude so strong. I hope you understand it almost knocked him over. Marrying an Apache will make you an outcast among your own suspicious, people. But most ranchers won't speak Nina Hashka, the town will call you into Apache. You'll regret my first husband decision. Was William Hashka. I'll take my chances. He was murdered James this morning by white men. He folded the paper carefully. His horse. Put it in his pocket. Then those men hunted legal proof now. Mr. Corrigan official gave me protection. Recorded. We went almost to the door when we married according to custom men walked in law. James now I am Nina Corrigan, and these men trying to kill me are breaking man from yesterday. And one of his companions, calm. The third man wore a Territorial explaining something obvious. The bearded man's eyes went wide. James almost saw James and Nina. William Hashka was shot for trespassing, and the voice argued. The marshal was an older now. He was off reservation. Tired eyes. We had his name was Thomas. To murder him. James had seen him in town a few times. To take his horse. At James. To hunt his widow. Nina. What law gives you that right? You said she was a fugitive. Tell me which judge she is. You could kill a bearded man people for sport. She and her husband were because there was no good off reservation. Everyone in Arizona Territory knew what happened to Apaches. We had to shoot. Everyone knew the violence. Corrigan interfered. Everyone knew the injustice. Legal no one said it out loud. Nina said coldly. No one admitted it. Is that what you call now Nina was forcing them to either admit what they'd done hunting me like an animal? James heard man's face went red. Not closer. That's a lie. Not attacking. Enough. Marshal Thomas said. Uncertain. He looked at James. Regrouping. Tell me your version. Over. Corrigan. James told the voice call. Simple. But it was farther away now. How Nina fell in front of his wagon. We'll check your story. How men were chasing her. We'll talk to the Indian agent. How they claimed she was property. We'll find out if you're lying. How James had offered protection by claiming marriage. And we'll bring how the marshal. How they gone to White River. I'll be at my ranch. Official. James She's answered. My wife now. You know where to James find me. Finished. The sound legally of horses faded. Agent Peterson just recorded it. Then nothing. Any attack just on wind and is an attack on me. And the dead man on my legal property. According to James waited 5 full minutes before Marshal Thomas looked at Peterson. Making sure. Is this true? Certain they were the marriage is recorded. Then he turned to look at Nina stiffly. She was still in the wagon. Apache holding the pistol. Properly witnessed. Her face was unreadable. It's legitimate. You lied. The bearded man said quietly. But yes, Marshal, they will just let them. They will learn the truth. Marshal Thomas interrupted. Nina climbed down from the wagon slowly. That's legal. Her wounded woman left blood streaks on the wood. But she's not. She walked to where James stood and looked at him with those dark. So tell me what crime she committed that justifies my life twice and your men hunting her across the territory. Silence. The bearded man's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. That's what I thought, Marshal Thomas said. He turned to James. I'll need to investigate the shooting in the canyon. You killed a man yesterday. In self-defense, James said. They were firing at us. At my wife. I defended us. That's my legal right. We'll see about that, Marshal Thomas said. But his tone wasn't hostile. Just professional. You'll need to come to my office in Prescott within the week. Give a full statement. Bring your wife. Bring witnesses if you have them. I'll be there, James promised. Marshal Thomas nodded. Then he looked at the bearded man and his companion. You two come with me. I want to hear more about this incident. About William Hashka's death. About why you were chasing Mrs. Corrigan. And I want the truth this time. The silence after the gunshot felt like the whole world holding its breath. Marshal, James pressed his back against the canyon rock. We'll discuss it at my office. His hands shook. Marshal Thomas said the rifle was hot. He gestured toward the door. From the barrel. The two men 20 feet away. The dead man lay in looking back at James and Nina. His horse had run in their eyes, disappearing into the desert with Marshal Thomas turned back behind the wagon. I don't know if your marriage is love. The bullet hit nothing, but it made the other riders pull back. But I'll tell you this. Their horses stamped and snorted. They've been involved in other incidents. Someone dropped a bottle and it shattered on rock. But there's been talk. The voice came from around the canyon bend. Women attacked. Always just outside the law's reach. You just killed a white man for an Apache squaw. You know what that means, James said quietly. James said nothing. The marshal laughed. His throat was too dry. James and Nina his mind was racing too fast. Peterson had gone back to his paperwork. He'd killed a man. Shot him off his horse, making it clear they weren't welcome to stay. For a woman he didn't know, the sun was climbing higher. For a stranger who'd fallen in front of his wagon. The day was heating up. But he'd seen her eyes. Nina walked to the wagon terror without speaking. And the certainty of both death. Of them processing and he'd made a choice. Now he had to live with it. The marshal's warning. The hatred in the bearded man's eyes. The voice continued. They will not stop. You got one rifle, Nina said as they climbed onto the wagon. You ain't getting out of this canyon alive. They will look for what we're going to do. You hand over this wall. We'll call it a chance to hurt us. We'll forget you killed Danny. James said. We'll ride away. He snapped the reins. The end of it. The horses started moving. Nina's eyes on heading toward his ranch. She hadn't said a word since he'd jumped from the wagon. But we have proof now. Just kept the pistol ready. We have the law on our side. Kept breathing. We just have to be more careful what kind of man James Corrigan really was. Really looked at him. No deal. You risked everything for me. His voice sounded stronger than your safety. Laughter. Mean laughter. James thought about the kind that has no humor in it. He'd been thinking about it all night. Then you're a dead man. Corrigan. Because someone had to wait you out, he said finally. Sun's going down soon. Because I'm tired of watching bad things happen. We'll pick you off when you try to leave. Because maybe we'll just burn you out. Maybe. Plenty of dry brush around here. Things can change. James's mind worked fast. You're a fool. The man was right. But there was something soft in her voice. Night coming. No help like within 20 miles. A brave fool. The fort was too far. But still a fool. The town was too far. James agreed. No one even knew James and Nina were here. For better or worse. They could die in this canyon. So we might as well make the best of find them for days. Nina almost smiled. She's my wife. Then she settled back on the wagon. The words came out before he watched the road ahead. Before 2 hours to James's ranch. Before his brain caught up with his mouth. To start building a life from lies and necessity. Even the hours seemed to figure out how to be married to a stranger. The voice sounded confused. It wasn't a love story. Less certain. It wasn't even a friendship yet. She's my wife. But it was a partnership. Apache custom. And in Arizona Territory to her husband's family. The marriage that was more valuable. Territorial law recognizes tribal marriages. So what you're chasing isn't a fugitive. She's a white man's wife. My wife. You touch her, you're attacking my legal property. James heard Nina suck in a breath behind him. But she didn't speak. Didn't contradict him. She was smart enough to understand what he was doing. Building a legal wall. Creating protection where none existed. Lying to save both their lives. That's horseshit, Corrigan. But the voice had doubt in it now. Uncertainty. You expect us to believe you married some Apache squaw? Today? Right after the man stopped himself. Almost admitted to murder. Believe what you want, James said. But I'm taking my wife home to my ranch. You want to stop me? You'll be attacking a married couple. A white rancher and his legal wife. That's a crime the territorial marshal can't ignore. That's federal attention. That's newspapers and judges and questions no one wants to answer. More silence. James could hear the men talking among themselves. Low voices. Arguing. The logic was working on them. Or the fear was. White men could get away with killing Apaches. Everyone knew that. But attacking a white rancher? Killing a white man and his legal wife? That brought consequences. Prove it. The voice finally said. Prove you're married. Show us papers. James felt his stomach drop. He had no papers. No proof. Nothing but a desperate lie told in a desperate moment. But before he could answer, Nina spoke. The marriage was yesterday, she called out. Her English was perfect. Clear. At the White River Apache camp. His family gave horses to my family. The ceremony was witnessed. The Indian agent will record it tomorrow. This is how Apache marriage works. This is how territorial law recognizes it. She was building on his lie, making it bigger, more detailed, more believable. James felt a surge of gratitude so strong, it almost knocked him over. And you are? The voice asked. Suspicious, but listening. Nina Hashka, daughter of the Sibique Apache. My first husband was William Hashka. He was murdered this morning by white men who wanted his horse. Then those men hunted me. Mr. Corrigan gave me protection. We went to White River. We married according to custom and law. Now I am Nina Corrigan. And these men trying to kill me are breaking territorial law. The way she said it. Calm. Factual. Like she was explaining something obvious to stupid children. James almost believed it himself. William Hashka was shot for trespassing, the voice argued. But it was weaker now. He was off reservation land. We had the right. To murder him? Nina interrupted. To take his horse? To hunt his widow? What law gives you that right? Show me. Tell me which judge said you could kill Apache people for sport. No answer. Because there was no good answer. Everyone in Arizona Territory knew what happened to Apaches. Everyone knew the violence. Everyone knew the injustice. But no one said it out loud. No one admitted it. And now Nina was forcing them to either admit what they'd done or back down. James heard horses moving. Not closer. Not attacking. Moving away. Uncertain. Regrouping. This ain't over, Corrigan, the voice called. But it was farther away now. Retreating. We'll check your story. We'll talk to the Indian agent. We'll find out if you're lying. And if you are, we'll be back. And we'll bring the marshal. I'll be at my ranch, James answered. You know where to find me. The sound of horses faded. Hoofbeats on rock. Then nothing. Just wind and silence and the dead man lying in the canyon. James waited 5 full minutes before he moved. Making certain they were really gone. Then he turned to look at Nina. She was still in the wagon, still holding the pistol. Her face was unreadable. You lied, she said quietly. Yes. They will check. They will learn the truth. I know. Nina climbed down from the wagon slowly. Her wounded arm left blood streaks on the wood. She walked to where James stood and looked at him with those dark, measuring eyes. You saved my life twice today. Part 5. The ranch appeared in the valley just as the sun reached its highest point. James felt his chest tighten when he saw it. His home. The place he'd built with his own hands. Now he was bringing a wife here. A stranger. An Apache woman he'd married to save her life. Everything was about to change. Nina sat silent beside him. She'd barely spoken during the 2-hour ride from White River. Just watched the land pass by. Studied everything with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. When the ranch came into view, she leaned forward slightly. Small, she observed. It's enough for one person, James said. Then he realized how that sounded. Was enough. Before. Now there are 2 people, Nina said. Not complaining. Just stating fact. We will need to make changes. The wagon rolled up to the house. James helped Nina down. She stood looking at everything. The log house. The barn that needed repairs. The corrals with broken fence rails. The 43 cattle scattered across the valley. She walked slowly around the property, limping slightly on her wounded leg, touching things. The corral fence. The water pump. The door frame. You built this alone? She asked. Yes. Took 3 years to get it this far. Nina nodded. You work hard. That's good. She turned to face him. But you don't work smart. Your cattle graze too scattered. Predators pick off the calves. Your water system is inefficient. Your corrals are poorly positioned. You waste energy on tasks that could be simpler. James felt his face flush. I've managed fine so far. You've managed to survive, Nina corrected. Not the same as thriving. If we're partners now, we do things better. I know cattle. I know land management. Apache people have been raising livestock for generations. Let me help. It wasn't a request. It was a statement. James realized Nina wasn't going to be a quiet wife who stayed in the house and cooked meals. She was going to be a partner. Equal. Active. Changing everything about how he ran this ranch. All right, James said slowly. Show me what you see. For the next hour, Nina walked the property and pointed out problems James had never noticed. Where water pooled and was wasted. Where cattle trails showed predator access. Where wind patterns damaged structures unnecessarily. She spoke like someone who'd studied land her whole life. Who understood how nature worked and how to work with it instead of against it. James listened. Really listened. And slowly he realized she was right about everything. We start tomorrow, Nina said finally. Today we rest. You show me the house. We figure out how to live together without killing each other. The house felt smaller with another person in it. Nina moved through the 2 rooms, examining everything. The stove. The shelves. The single bed in the back room. She said nothing about the bed. Just kept looking. Cataloging. Planning. Your arm needs cleaning again, James said. The wound could get infected. Nina nodded and sat at the wooden table. She unwrapped the bandage Bashad had applied that morning. The bullet graze looked angry and swollen. James heated water and found clean cloth. As he cleaned the wound, Nina sat perfectly still, not flinching, not showing pain even though it had to hurt. You've been shot before, James said quietly. Twice, Nina admitted. Once when I was 16. Raiding party attacked our camp. Bullet went through my shoulder. I survived. The second time was yesterday. James finished wrapping fresh bandages. I'm sorry. For everything that's happened to you. For your husband. For all of it. Sorry doesn't change anything, Nina said. But her voice was softer. What changes things is action. You took action yesterday. You stopped when others would have driven past. You fought when you could have surrendered me. You married me when you could have abandoned me. That's what matters. They ate a simple meal. Beans and hardtack. Not much but enough. Then came the awkward moment neither had addressed. Sleeping arrangements. We share the bed, Nina said bluntly. If someone comes looking for proof we're really married, they need to see a married couple, not a man sleeping in his barn while his wife sleeps alone. I'll sleep on the floor, James offered. Don't be stupid, Nina replied. The bed is big enough for two people who respect boundaries. We sleep on opposite sides. We maintain modesty, but we share the space. This is survival, not romance. James wanted to argue but couldn't find a reason that made sense. Everything Nina said was logical, practical, the kind of thinking that kept people alive in dangerous situations. Night fell. They prepared for sleep in awkward silence. Nina used one room to change. James used the other. When he finally lay down on his side of the bed, Nina was already still. The space between them felt like a canyon. James, Nina's voice came through the darkness. Thank you. I know I said it before, but I mean it. You could have done nothing. Most men would have. You chose differently. You would have done the same, James said. No, Nina said quietly. I couldn't have. I'm Apache. I have no power to protect anyone, not even myself. That's the difference between us. You had a choice. I didn't. Remember that when things get hard. James lay awake thinking about her words, about choice and power and the invisible lines that separated people in Arizona territory, about how wrong it all was. The next morning came with pounding on the door. James grabbed his rifle and opened it carefully. 3 Apache men stood outside. Nina's family. They'd brought supplies, food, tools, blankets, gifts for the new marriage. But they'd also brought a warning. The bearded man and his friends were at the reservation yesterday. The oldest man said through Nina's translation, asking questions, threatening people, looking for proof your marriage is false. They won't stop. You need to be ready. We'll be ready, James promised. The men left. James and Nina stood together watching them go. Then Nina turned to him with determination in her eyes. We make this marriage look real, she said. We work together. We build this ranch together. We create a life that no one can question. That's how we survive. Not by hiding, by living so openly that lies become impossible. Over the following weeks, they did exactly that. Nina proved herself as capable as she'd claimed. She reorganized the cattle grazing, improved the water systems, taught James techniques he'd never considered. In return, James taught her to read English better, to understand legal documents, to navigate white man's systems. Neighbors heard about the marriage. Some stopped speaking to James entirely. Others made their hatred clear through threats and insults. But James and Nina kept working, kept building, kept proving that their partnership was real. The bearded man never returned. The marshal investigated and found enough evidence of wrongdoing that the men left the territory entirely. William Hashka's murder went officially unpunished. But at least the men who killed him were gone. 3 months after the marriage, James woke to find Nina standing outside at dawn. He brought her coffee without asking. They stood together watching the sunrise paint the valley gold and red. Do you regret it? Nina asked. Everything that happened? Everything that changed. James thought honestly. His life was harder now, more complicated. But when he looked at Nina, he saw someone who was alive, someone who'd survived, someone who'd become a true partner. No, he said. I don't regret it. Neither do I, Nina admitted. This wasn't the life I planned. But it's a good life. An honest life. We built it together from nothing but necessity and choice. We're going to be fine, James said. Yes, Nina agreed. We will be. They stood together as the sun rose. 2 people who'd met by accident, married by necessity, and became partners by choice. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on honesty and work and mutual respect. The ranch grew. The partnership deepened. And somewhere in the slow accumulation of shared days and shared struggles, James and Nina found something neither had expected. Not love exactly, but something stronger. Trust. Understanding. The quiet knowledge that they'd both made the right choice when the world demanded they make the easy one. Years later, their ranch became known throughout the territory. Not for scandal, but for success. For being one of the best-run operations in Arizona. People asked their secret. James and Nina would smile and say simply, partnership. Real partnership. That's all it takes. And every time they told that story, they'd remember the day a bleeding woman fell in front of a wagon. The day a rancher chose courage over comfort. The day a lie became truth because 2 strangers decided that survival was worth fighting for. That was their legacy. Not romance. Not drama. Just two people who stood together when the world expected them to stand apart. And in standing together, they proved that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged not in love, but in the simple decision to be decent when decency costs everything.